Einer. Guten Morgen. You just had to wear that sweatshirt, right, Barry?
Oh, well, I did my laundry, so this was the next one in the stack.
Oh, it's good. I like it. My dad used to run the New Mexico State math contest.
Ah,
I have lots of T-shirts and other paraphernalia having to do with the math contest there. Hey, State.
yeah.
Hello.
My calculus teacher also ran the math contest, including the International Math Olympiad. And about 15 years ago, they published both a book and a video. And it turned out that the winner of the International Math Olympiad, as announced by my old calculus teacher, was a young kid who, when he was 8 years old, I mentored him locally here in Boston. And this kid grew up to be quite a math genius. In fact, he already was, because he won the Math Olympiad, I guess, as a teenager.
So what's he doing now?
He works, for a while, he worked for the Field Institute. I think that's what it's called. But then he took a job at a company that uses advanced math to work out financial calculations.
There's a lot of those.
You know,
Everybody's trying to use either math or stat or AI to try and get ahead in the financial business.
so he probably makes a lot of money doing that, more so than he could if he just stuck with pure abstract mathematics.
I just put a link in the chat, Barry, just for you.
Okay.
That's one of my dad's 6 books.
Oh,
Wow.
cool, cool.
It's a compilation of the problems that he posed for the the New Mexico State math contest back when he was running it for about a decade.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, I
Is it-
actually worked with a few kids who entered math contests. There was one that was held here in Boston back in the 90s. I'm not sure, remember the name of it, but a young woman that I had mentored entered it. But I don't remember how she did.
Stace, you about to say something?
Yeah, it's going to totally change the topic.
Always happens in these conversations.
Is it, Sam, this is to you. Is it hard to live up to a father that's so accomplished?
Oh yeah. Imagine having a father who's accomplished and a grandfather who's really accomplished. And then I'm just sitting here without a PhD, you know?
Does that bother you that you didn't go all the way through to a PhD?
Kind of. Not really now, but you know, degrees open doors, and degrees don't just open doors in companies, they open doors in people's minds.
Yeah, that's true.
Now, they close certain doors also, you know. But
I
What?
actually know somebody, I won't say the person's name, who hides the fact that he has a PhD.
Although
Which I
I
thought was
did
crazy.
work for a company at once who would not promote people into certain levels of management unless you did have a PhD. But that company has long since been acquired by another company, and I don't know of any company that does that today.
And there's no placement test?
The placement test is, do you have a PhD? Otherwise, you ain't getting to the top.
And another note, since Heiner's here, I was so excited to see the picture that was posted this morning. Did you guys see it?
I did not.
That
Heiner, you want to?
Was that the one that Klaus, that had Klaus's name mentioned in it?
No, there was one person I didn't know and I didn't read because I was rushing to get here, but it was Tammy and Harry and Heiner and Jean-Paul. And who
Oh,
was
that
the other-
one. That one, yes.
Yeah, Jean-Paul Close. How do you say his last name? Close?
I thought it was.
Yeah. Yeah, I did see it, but it was a small image, so I couldn't make out the faces on it.
They're all at dinner and we weren't invited.
There you have it.
We were, I'm sure we were invited. I'm sure we were invited.
Where was the invitation?
Yes, everybody was thinking about you. We just had a short stopover in Eindhoven, and everybody was thinking and talking about you. And I think it's a series of pictures. You just click it and you go through the slideshow. So no excuse. So Tammy is very well. And it was really relaxing. After the meal, we went to their home, Harry's and Tammy's home. And it was really good. We wanted to stop over for 1 hour, but we stayed 4 and came very, very late to Hamburg. But I'm now in Berlin. But I want to go back to this PhD. I don't have a PhD. So it is really a strange society we are living in. Have you been ever in a cycle where people have a lot of PhDs, but what's count is honorary PhDs? This is really, again, the top of the crop. And I want to tell an anecdote. There is Professor Sauer and, oh, I forgot. No, I'll tell it a little later. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. No, I'm still that tired. I just woke up, took a shower. We have a salon about lifestyle of a person being in the streets and dancing tango. And I need at least another 1 or 2 days to recover. It was one of the extreme things in my life to survive maybe 4 weeks, and Jörg did 6 and more.
You're muted.
You're
Sam.
muted, Sam.
I have to get the dogs in control. They just woke up, so give me a few minutes. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Thing about getting a PhD, I remember a year or so after I got mine in 1975, I had to explain to people about a PhD. I said that and 25 cents will get you half a cup of coffee.
Only half a cup?
Well, it's 1975. Coffee was 50 cents in those days.
Kayla or Josh, you want to check in?
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
I will be in the airport at 1 o'clock to head over to Seattle. By 6 o'clock is when my arrival time is. So I am just listening and getting last minute stuff done, but it's good to see everybody.
I didn't know you were flying. I thought you were driving.
Oh, geez. I wish I could drive. It's just a little too long. I mean, it would probably take, if I wanted to relax and enjoy myself, I would probably give 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
3 days to get up there, a couple of days to relax and enjoy, and then take my time going back down. Because I think I don't know how long it is, to be honest, but once upon a time I thought about it. It'd just be nice if I did that with another person and not by myself.
Yeah, it's a 3-day drive, Southern California to Seattle.
Next week, I have to drive down to Florida by myself with Marley, but he doesn't help with the driving. So not looking forward to it.
He rides shotgun and looks outside the right side window.
They used to let me fly with him on my lap. Now no more. So mom's got to do what she has to do.
I don't know that we've ever seen Marley on camera in your house, have we?
I think so. Well, he's laying down, but I'll get him before the end of the call. But on some call, I know he's been there. We just walked for an hour and it's cold and my nose still feels like it's like it's running.
Take your nose for a walk.
My eyes are tearing. Right now they're tearing.
How cold is it over there?
I'm going to look right now. I'm going to say it's in the high 30s.
It's 39 here in suburbs of Boston.
36, it says. So I'm surprised that we lasted for so long, but I got here just in time to go on the call.
Ooh, that's a little rough.
It got up to 70. I think it might have been Thursday. It got up to 70 here.
So we have no focus for today's call.
I don't think anybody proposed a topic. Did you see anybody propose a topic?
I did not. We're missing a lot of regulars.
No, I'm not sure if the week before Thanksgiving means anything in terms
It
of
doesn't. Thanksgiving doesn't even mean anything.
I was going to say, I think it's because it's the week before Thanksgiving. There's always a lot of things going on. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be doing a Facebook Live on the holidays.
Oh,
So if you guys want to join.
What do you mean? Like what exactly are you doing?
Well, it's actually for my dance group. It's so cute because they all want me to continue teaching, which is really great.
Yeah.
But I can't do it because of my kids, There's only so much I could do as a single mom. So they were asking me what they can do to just kind of keep it alive, especially since there's not too many dance studios here that offer what I offer. So I'm just going to give them some pointers on Facebook Live.
Oh,
And it's
nice.
just basically life pointers.
Sounds good. I feel like this is an experiment, is what happens when the leader leaves the room.
Kayla, you haven't met my other Facebook friend, Anne-Marie Lamond, have you?
No, I have not.
Yeah, she also is into dance. That was, I guess you would say, a minor in her education. She studied and taught dance at University of British Columbia. So I know two people who were into dance.
I honestly love the cultural aspect of it more than I actually love the movements, and it's probably because I'm getting a little older. But it's great because I've actually found 10 girls who are just as interested in the culture as I am. So it's I'm more focused on the culture and execution as opposed to just like the art of dance, if you will. I don't know how to describe that.
Well, as one ages, one goes into choreography as opposed to, being a performer.
Hi, Alex.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
You can be much more creative as a choreographer than you can as a performer enacting somebody else's choreography.
Well, speaking, since you mentioned that, a couple of days ago, I had some friends over and I wanted to try out something that I was working on with them. So I read them my piece, and then there's a part where you stop and you do like this interpretive dance. I won't even call it dance because it's really a movement. And the one woman, first of all, she was brought to tears, which was really, that was the goal. At least that was the goal of the writing, is to help people to release emotions. But we had so much fun doing the movement part that it was encouraging for me to continue, because people, once they let go and they knew they didn't have to follow steps, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I love the way football players do a little victory dance after they win a goal, and they do this mirror image victory dance with all that funky stuff. There's a really funny video of a newscaster team, a male and female newscaster, and during the commercial breaks, they do a little sitting dance, a little routine. And one time they recorded it and put it up on YouTube. It's really hilarious. This whole routine that this male-female newscaster team does during the commercial break. It's like a 3-minute routine. All done in synchrony.
I'm just going to make a second cup of coffee. I will be right back.
Oh, Helios is taking longer than the others. So as soon as he comes back, I'm going to take another 10 seconds and let him in. But the other three have been done. So sorry for being absent the last few minutes here.
So Stacy was wondering whether or not there's a topic suggested yet for today.
I always have a few suggestions, but let me see if we stir things up a little bit first. 2 words. Kyle Rittenhouse.
Yeah, I figured that's what you were going to say. And the
I have
failure,
7 other words, but those are 2.
the systemic failure of the legal system, the justice system.
It's either that or the media.
Well,
right?
the media is part of it because they hype these things up.
Right. So the
Knowing what
media
goes better.
basically pronounced him guilty from the start, and may not have presented both sides of the story. On the other hand, what they did present was already pretty egregious, seems to me.
Well, the violence is what was, presented, but the fact that Wisconsin has a pretty strict self-defense law, which is very technical, they didn't go into, the inner workings of the self-defense law in Wisconsin.
I saw a meme from a girl who was posting on behalf of all the women that are in prison for self-defense, murdering their husband or their partner.
Right. But they're not, none of that's on tape.
I thought, well, if somebody's coming at you with a weapon, what do? You use self-defense.
What you do is you have cameras recording everything 24/7 around your house.
But what was he doing there in the first place?
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. What the hell was he doing there in the first place? He is a teenager. The one thing I also wanted to say was why the hell did his mom drive him there? I would never let my children go, into a potentially violent situation. So yes, I vote for Kyle Rittenhouse, please.
Yeah. I just,
His mum might be as far to the extreme as he is, Andrew.
well, I mean,
Flag
the apple
carrying.
doesn't fall far from the tree. I think they're all brainwashed. I mean, half the country is brainwashed, at least half.
I don't even think the mother drove him there. I think she had, I mean, I'm going back down my memory. I think she had driven him to work, and after work, he was picked up with a friend. And it was this part I know is for sure. It was the friend's stepfather who held the gun in his safe and handed out the guns before they went to the riot. So I'm gonna get a little bit, the whole thing, let me just let Heiner back in. Yeah, I actually kind of feel for the mother. To be living, I mean, the kid needs help. The fact that he's with a group of people that are ready to arm 17-year-olds to go out and defend a town is a real problem. And, I know we could all rip on a mother, but, I wonder how much in control she was in the first place. Where's his father? Why isn't anybody like getting on his father? Where is he? The whole situation's just a horrible situation. And I think the bigger problem is the laws that make it so that he was acquitted.
Yep, that's the point. The Wisconsin law.
And the jury?
Weren't they pretty much all white?
Yep.
Yeah.
But you know what? I watched another compilation of videos that was, and it was from all different angles. And I watched it because, and I'll post it because I do have it. After I watched it, it's very clear that in the first instance, when the one guy who is the one that was released, that obviously had an anger problem and was chasing him and did throw something at him, his first response was not to shoot. His first response was to run. He was running away from the guy. So it's the other two victims that I really feel for, because in their mind, they're taking down a shooter. So they're like the good guys. And in his mind, he's being attacked. So for me, that's where the whole thing gets blurry. But this is one story I stayed away from the beginning because I'm angry, but I'm angry at the whole culture that even allowed that to happen in the first place.
Exactly. But I think there's two things that might happen in the aftermath. One is civil lawsuits for wrongful death from the three victims. So that's outside the criminal system. And then the other thing is way back during the peak of the civil rights movement, where vigilantes were shooting people who were part of the civil rights protest movement. There was, if memory serves, there was a case where the federal government brought charges against a shooter, and the charge was not murder. The charge was denying a protester their civil rights, denying them their civil rights by killing them. But it wasn't a murder charge, it was a denial of civil rights charge, much lesser charge. And I think, unless the law has changed, that the federal government could, in principle, bring a federal charge of denying the protesters their civil rights.
And the judge?
Judge, what a joke.
That was terrible.
That's why people have lost faith in the system. There's so many reasons to lose faith in the system. But boy, that really dotted the I and crossed the T on that one.
5 or 10 years ago, I used to see a little town, Madison, in Wisconsin, listed widely as one of the best places to live in the United States.
Yeah.
great schools, great
Yep.
parks, great
Yep.
outdoor recreation,
Yep.
great cost of living. They didn't cover this.
I've been there. I've been to Madison.
I did
That's
too.
right.
I was there just a couple years ago in February.
Yeah. That's where I presented our first peer-reviewed paper on the theory of emotions and learning. That's where we won the best theory paper award in 2001, right? At a conference in Madison, Wisconsin.
Hmm.
20 years ago.
What kind of protest was going on where that event occurred?
I didn't catch that. Say that again more clearly, Alex.
There was a protest going on, some kind of civil disobedience going on where that crime was committed.
You mean after the verdict was announced?
No, I'm talking about the shooting.
Oh, the original. Yeah. Was it a Me Too rally? Do you remember what it was originally?
It was
Stacey?
BLM, Black Lives Matter,
BLM. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
which is another kind of screw up right there.
Well, that sheds some more light on the verdict and the court and the overseer adjudication. He's not an adjudicator. He's a civil officer of the court.
Yeah. So it makes it a much more racist case. If it was a BLM protest, that's much more racist.
It's racist to the core ever since the start.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine anybody else getting away with this other than a white man?
No.
No. Well, that's like that case, was it in Georgia or Florida? With Trayvon Martin. It's very similar to the Trayvon Martin case. Except that wasn't even a protest. The guy was just walking home with a bag of Skittles from the Stop and Shop or the 7-Eleven.
I think the prisons are full of black people who are simply trying to defend themselves from excessive violence coming from police officers and others.
All right, I put it in the chat. I just wanted to make sure when it came up like that, I wasn't sure if that was the right thing. But if anybody
even
wants to
know.
watch it later.
I don't
What?
even know how to start on this because the information the public has been given on this is so questionable and arguably so incomplete.
Mhm.
Because we don't have a trustworthy journalism cadre anymore. And yet at the same time, we can still see, even if it was all there, we still have a jury and a trial and a judge system that was, shall we say, very white.
Yeah. One of the legal pundits says the only thing that's predictable about a jury trial is that it's entirely unpredictable.
I've been getting pushback from members of Chris Hedges supporters. They think I'm being biased. They think I'm being too far left or too far right and allowing the group to be taken over by extremists. But I pointed out that, you've got to adjudicate. A host has to allow both sides of the issue to be displayed so that there can be discussion, and that shut them up. Over.
I'm just putting in the chat the name of the person that created the video that I posted. His name is Matt Orthalia, and I found him to be really what journalism should be. So I'm just going to put his name in the chat.
Thanks, Stacey. Kayla's got her hand up.
Yeah, I don't know where to begin too. But what is a kid doing at a Black Lives Matter protest armed? What is he protecting?
An empty warehouse.
That just astounds me.
Yeah.
And also the fact that these protests too. I mean, look at the Capitol Hill one. Look at all of these protests where, you know, the justice system is just fucked. It's going the wrong way.
Yeah.
And then people have the nerve to say that Colin Kaepernick, you know, is not a good person for doing an extremely peaceful and effective protest. One person. This kid shot 3 people.
Yeah.
Killed 2 of them.
Yeah.
At a Black Lives Matter protest. Protecting what? That's where my mind is right now, is just blown.
And drinking with Proud Boys.
Well, I'm surprised, but I disagree with you. Because I've heard a lot of the details. In fact, I've heard so much about it, I don't want to hear anymore. But you guys go ahead and talk about it.
No, Colin, I'm actually with you. I really don't want to talk about it either. I mean, I'd rather not focus on any one instance, but like, to me, it's the bigger picture.
It's the
Like the whole-
systemic issue.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. The whole system is rotten. I mean, way back in 1985, I was chatting with a detective in the little town of Lincroft, New Jersey about an issue. And he leveled with me. He says, Barry says, the whole system is rotten.
It's not rotten, it's racist. It's a difference because they're letting white people off and putting black people in prison.
This
You know,
was
the media, the mainstream media, the way they're handling it's disgraceful too.
But the media handles everything disgracefully. like I don't think the media is biased. They will take whatever position they can take to sensationalize something.
Some of them jump up and down and say, oh, look, he was only defending himself. The courts have made the decision. He was within his legal rights, so he's off scot-free. They're not looking at the other side of the picture that shows hundreds of thousands of black people who were doing the same thing and yet got convicted of murder. So that's the mainstream media. They're in there with the judicial system and the white people who make the laws.
The system is not going to right itself in our lifetime. It may never right itself. The system could just end up collapsing, you know, like a slow motion landslide.
Sam?
So I have a fantasy or a dream, okay? Let's imagine a what if scenario where in the last 4 years, we really learned how to be collectively intelligent. We really learned how to process information, to problem solve together, to look at various different perspectives together, to actually put together, you know, well-reasoned sense-making scenarios and action plans better than any individual one of us could do, or 2 or 3, because we are collectively intelligent. And that therefore, then we could actually look at situations like this Kyle Rittenhouse situation, or the Me Too movement, or the Ahmaud Arbery murder, or the Breonna Taylor murder, or any of a countless number of others, and say, this is what we recommend. This is what happened. We reconstructed it. We looked at all the data. This is what, you know, we see. This is what we recommend. This would be most effective. That would be my fantasy if we were collectively intelligent.
Yeah. That's been a dream for, like, I don't know, at least 3,500 years. But it's a dream by just a very, very small minority of the population to create an ethical society, a non-violent ethical society, and a high-functioning society. There are people who understand, you know, what that would look like, and they write, you know, they can write fantasy novels about it. But the likelihood of 8 billion people evolving to that level is just, the probability is nil to non-existent.
We don't need 8 billion. We just need a few thousand, I believe.
I think we need about 10% to be deeply, have a deep insight into what that means and how to manifest it. And I think we have maybe less than 1% right now.
think
Stacey?
trying to define.
Stacy's
sorry.
got her hand up.
That's okay. Go ahead.
Well, Alex has his hand up also.
The jury, if they are put through a course before they serve on juries, then they can get a bit of education about ethics and unbiased judicial procedures, because at the moment they're not. The jury, anyone can do jury service.
The jury did a good job, I think. They did what they were charged to do.
They followed the letter of the law.
Yeah, that's their job.
The letter of the law might be misguided, but they followed the letter of the law.
What about the evidence that was either admitted or deemed inadmissible?
It's not about law, it's about justice. And if you do what is merely legal, you're inclined to forego justice. That's the problem.
When you say justice, you have to say, am I talking about retributive justice, restorative justice, or some other concept of justice? And I think in this country, they think mainly about retributive justice, which was the dumbest idea humans ever came up with. There's also this idea of restorative justice, which makes a lot of sense, but very few people understand it or practice it or propose it.
Yeah, but there's a mixture of different kinds of justice to make one form of justice, one that's restorative and punishment in there for the person who committed the offense.
There's also rehabilitative justice, which is barely even mentioned. If you got retributive justice, restorative justice, and rehabilitative justice, the scales are way over here on the retributive side, vengeance.
It's a corporation running the prisons for the 1%. They're getting cheap labor. Well, you know, you talk about justice, restorative justice, and if they put them in training camps, they can get them to work and produce stuff for the corporation, for the private corporation that runs the prison.
I mean, you could go out on the street and say to the average person on the street, explain the difference between retributive justice, rehabilitative justice, and restorative justice. My guess is you'd be lucky to get one person in 100 who could give you a clear answer. Go ahead, Sam. I'm sorry.
Just note that Colin was trying to speak.
Yeah, I'm just saying either we use hands or we don't. Like, I don't mind using hands, but when people do both, then, you know, makes it difficult.
Well, on that point, I would just ask people to try and use the Zoom feature so that it's evident and visible to everybody.
And if Barry and Alex want to talk back and forth, that's fine, but that's all I was doing at the same time. So
what do you want to say, Colin?
Well, the thing I wanted to say before we got onto a new thing was restorative justice, which I think is very interesting, is that it comes down to trying to define what's better. When Sam was asking about collective intelligence. And I think we could probably design a nice system that we could discuss better, but we'd probably never come to a conclusion of what actually is better. So we could devise paper and pencil, but do we know what to write down? That's the first thing. And that takes us to the justice argument or discussion. And with restorative justice, yeah, I forget what I was going to say about that point. I just wanted to restore justice of hand raising. But yeah, it's kind of a situation where Sam thinks you can do it with a few people. Barry thinks you need 10%. And I'm thinking it comes down to the stories that we build that guide the justice, and that's a lot older. And you know, Sam saying, well, what facts weren't introduced, what facts were introduced. There was a lot of information that went by what happened in what was it, like under 3 minutes? He shot a pedophile and that said he was going to kill him, and he shot another guy who was going for his gun. I don't know, and another guy who was raised his firearm and shot his arm off. Like, it was in the middle of a chaos, which is a bit of a tragedy. So we're talking about tragedies within tragedies. I don't even know how I would start to lay that out. I think when Taylor said the Black Lives Matters revolt was chaos to begin with, I would say that's where they should have started with. I don't know if Kyle had the right to protect his ground, his land. I know hundreds of years ago, kids were doing it when they're 14. So it's a lot more ridiculous.
Doing what when they were 14?
Getting involved.
Fighting, soldiering, killing. Anyway.
Anyway, it's a matter of moving on, and I do like the idea, Sam, of collective intelligence, although I really don't know how you could get people together and decide what's better.
Okay,
You can
so let
go
me, I have my hand up. I
Yeah,
see two other hands up, but let me make 2 points and then relinquish the floor. One is I want to respond to your, we will never decide statement. I think if that is the case, then I'll also say that is part of the problem. Okay, if we think that the problem is too hard and we sit out, we become part of the problem. So I think there is only a viable alternative here, which is to be optimistic, to think that we can do something about this. Otherwise, you're on the sideline, you're allowing whatever is happening to take place. That's statement number one. That goes all the way back to Elie Wiesel. That goes back to many people who've said, including Einstein, who say either you're part of the solution or you're part of the problem. The second thing is on various different forms of justice. To me, the one that matters is this 7th generation thinking. If you can't think about a society that you are either helping to create or helping to kill with what you do today, going forward 7 generations, then you're probably just twitching, reacting, and not really strategically, deciding a plan of action. Those are the only 2 points I want to make, is that you got to either lean in and become part of the solution, or you lean out and you become part of the problem, in my view. And you got to think strategically for at least 5 or 7 generations and have that kind of systemic thinking, which I admit, I agree with Barry, is unusual to find. It's hard to find. Okay, I see Alex, Stacy, and Josh.
Okay, I'll be short. With the idea behind getting a systemic organization up and running in order to be a next generation, and then the following one and the following one up to 7. There's got to be a process that ensures that the cell that initiates the process divides, which is an agreement you make with one other friend, like the community of impact. If you've done that properly, you're one person who's made a difference, because the other person you make that agreement with will understand what you're talking about. You're talking about a growth, organic growth that produces an enormous organization of people who are in agreement with each other about the need to focus on solutions and not focus on division and hate and violence. The need to focus, the need to connect the heart with the mind, to think ethically and morally and make better decisions. It's simple. It's very simple stuff. And the key ingredient, I think, is what we need to focus on, and that is one single person's ability to make an agreement with one single other person and join that, make it known, use the 4 agreements, make it known in a document and publish it, and it's there forever. I like to call it the Forever Foundation, but there's some pharmaceutical companies already using that name for stuff the girls put on their face. It's a foundation makeup. But the Forever Foundation means whatever we say is recorded, and it will never be, we can pass away, but this data is retained. It's in the cloud, it's on servers, you've got copies on your hard drive probably, it's in the internet, it's in the cyberspace. Now, if it gets deleted, it's because somebody hasn't done the job, We've got people who can look after this kind of stuff, data engineers. Over.
So I can't speak to what computers can do because I have no idea. But what I will say is that the challenge that I see is that very, very few of us are able to maintain a state where we're not acting emotionally, where we're not judging a situation based on our own filters and past and perceptions. And like I said, I stayed away from this case because in so many ways, whether it was because I was trying to be compassionate or because I was so angry, either way, I knew it would be hard to keep my center. And I'm trying really hard. Most people don't. You know, the minute something upsets them, it's easier for them to use whatever that is as a projection, as a way to get rid of whatever they're feeling energetically. So I don't see how how computers could help that part of the equation. You know, I think, I've never met a person that would say, if I asked them, if you had a disagreement with your neighbor, would it be okay for you to send your son over there with a gun? They would all say no. Yet I know plenty of people that would send their sons overseas or daughters overseas to kill people. So it's just, what's the difference except for the separation and the way we're able to separate ourselves from other human beings. So I just wanted to put that out there because in some ways I wish computers could make the decision, but not until they're programmed by people who are able to separate their feelings and recognize that it has to work for people you like and people you don't like, and that there are extenuating situations and nuances to things. I'm complete.
Josh?
Yeah, I'm slowly taking in everything that's being said this morning and trying to understand why focus is the problem. And when I say that, I'm going back to what Barry posted on Facebook this week regarding talking about a lot of things and then getting nowhere. And I'm referencing a really good podcast that came out this week with Daniel Smottenberger. I can't remember the guy's name, but he was the one who produced The Social Dilemma, and Joe Rogan. And it was a deep 3-hour conversation. They could barely even focus on all the systemic problems because there's just too many to focus on. And towards the end, they got to the point where they said, okay, we understand what's going on. The three of us, to some extent, we need maybe another 6 to 7 hours of discussing it. But the general public will never discover what's going on until it's too late. And I think that's sort of the problem is everyone in here in the GCC, we all talk to each other. We know justice system. We've discussed that, blah, 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 on and on and on. But until there is something that's the catalyst, no one will want to do something about something that hasn't happened yet. So when we're talking 7 generations ahead, until we get to the 7 generations ahead, how will we be able to convince people it's actually happening until it's actually happening? And with that, I'm complete.
So far, a couple of 3 memes have come up. Chaos, and in the case of the rallies, those were high-speed, violent episodes. They were chaotic, and they were rapid. That is, they took place in a space of hours. So we have the issue of justice systems, which operate in slow motion. We have chaos, which can be high-speed chaos. That can also be slow motion systemic chaos, which is less recognizable. And then we have violence in the culture. One of the major breakthroughs in the 20th century was the development of a branch of mathematics called chaos theory. And chaos theory asked the question, how do you intentionally make chaos? What kind of a system is inherently chaotic? And how do you make it on purpose? And the discovery, which was suspected for millennia, but only rigorously demonstrated with computers, Stacy. Computers can demonstrate, can prove how you make chaos on purpose. This is a major discovery of the 20th century mathematics. What's the easiest way to make chaos intentionally?
Make rules.
Exactly. Make and follow rules religiously, strictly. Rule-based systems are inherently, mathematically, provably chaotic. So if you don't want a chaotic system, you have to architect it with a regulatory mechanism that is not rule-based. It has to be function-based. And now you say, who on this planet can explain to you what the hell a function is? And this is where Sam gets to the point about intelligent. Sam's father was a mathematician, highly intelligent, and he specialized in mathematical reasoning. Mathematical reasoning tells us if you want a well-regulated system, you build it out of carefully crafted functions, not rules, because if you build it out of rules, it's going to be chaotic. Now, how long is it going to take for 8 billion people in the 21st century to come to that insight, which I'm going to say less than 1% of the population currently can wrap their brain around?
I'd say unnatural rules, but yes. What's an unnatural?
Well, how about a rule that has an if, then, or else clause, where the or else clause is clobber the hell out of them?
Yeah.
It's a slight generalization, but I get your point. So this question about how do we convince people, or how do we sense make across 8 billion people, or how do we do action planning? How do we get this seventh generation perspective? I think there's 2 elements I'd like to put on the table. And one is hopefully not so controversial. That's education. Although unfortunately, it's more controversial today than it was 10 or 20 or 30 years ago. That education is undervalued because what we see today is typically bad education, right? This factory-oriented sense of education, this time-blocked sense of education, this fixed syllabus sense of education. But I do think that the larger sense of education, in other words, how do you actually assimilate information? How do you actually interpret a situation? How do you solve problems? How do you make sense? Those are skills which I think are underemphasized in our educational system today. The second element I'd like to bring in, and this is the making sense out of chaos as well as across 8 billion people notion, is that there needs to be a way to represent reasoning and to test it. If I think I believe something or 100 somethings, there ought to be a way to test whether or not that set of 100 somethings is actually useful to hold. So this is why I really believe in this notion of executable knowledge. If you believe something, then your knowledge ought to be, in a sense, interpretable. There's some background noise somewhere.
From Colin, I think.
Let me get rid of
It ought to be interpretable by an objective thing so that you can actually figure out for yourself and for others whether or not the knowledge you hold is actually useful and or even correct. So the name I've put to this thing is, it's not a good one, but the name has been Global Sim, which is a mind which can actually hold information, can hold knowledge, and yet still be testable, and then can be revised by anyone. And if we were able to do this and then compose our knowledge together in 2s and 3s and then larger groups, then we potentially would have hundreds and then thousands and then hundreds of thousands and then millions of people able to contribute together to various different global minds and to have them testable, to say, if we believed this and if we applied this to that situation, what would have been a course of action that would have been recommended? And then to do that back testing, and then to refine your information, and then to do it all over again, and especially to do it in real time. Until we learn how to compose our knowledge together and how to scale our collective reasoning, I think we have a huge challenge to really, really understand collective intelligence. It may not be possible. So to those who actually decry technology and its role in this, I'm probably in fervent disagreement. I think technology is one way that we actually do connect, just the way we're doing now in a very feeble way, but represents a much better opportunity to connect in much stronger ways. Because right now, wet organs can't quite scale the way we can with the internet and with other kinds of technology. So technology is not all bad, it's not all good, it's just how you utilize it. And for me, I'd like to see technology utilized in assisting us attaining collective intelligence. Those are the two items I'd like to put on the table right now. Over.
Alex, can I just say one thing really quickly? I wasn't decrying technology. I was just saying, me personally, I don't have any knowledge. I can't.
I'm not talking about you, Stacy. I'm talking
Just wanna
about many
make-
others. Yeah.
Okay, I just
I'm not
want to
talking
make
about-
that clear. I'm just saying, I don't know how to do it. Okay, thanks, Alex.
That was not directed at you, Stacy.
Okay.
I had an image of a room full of robots, and the programmer was watching from above, and if you removed all the information from the robots' programs and just let them mingle together in the room, they'd bump into each other chaotically. But if the program was teaching them how to respond to those interruptions and act in accordance with a certain rule, you'd remove the chaos. They'd be back to random bumping into each other chaotically. Actually, that wouldn't work, would it? The rule would screw it up.
It's not that simple.
But a human being with a heart and a mind making a connection technologically with another advanced human being to make an agreement is a step in the right direction. It's using technology to enhance the power of one. Over.
So I think those kind of situations can be modeled in multiple different extremes. There's a simple way. Just tell each robot to just sit still, right? That doesn't approximate human behavior. Humans have hunger, they have muscles that, get stressed. They've got curiosities that need to go sated. So that's what, contributes to random behavior, quote unquote, in humans that right now we don't see or we don't put into robots. So until robots go through an evolution the way toddlers and children and babies do, they're not going to encounter phenomena in the real world and learn how to deal with that phenomena. Until a robot starts as a baby and is just soaking in information and learning how its appendages work and learning what senses come into it and sort of learning how to make sense of all of that. And then whether or not people react in angry ways or friendly ways when it does certain things, those are what babies and toddlers go through. And if robots don't learn any of that, then robots can't begin to approximate human experience and therefore human kinds of behavior, in my opinion. But we are going to get there because sooner or later, someone's going to put a set of robots through this kind of evolution. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. But if we just start by programming robots, it's not going to happen that way, in my opinion. Barry.
Yeah, actually, it's already been done. If you've seen some of those demonstrations with the flocking of quadcopters, hundreds or thousands of quadcopters flying in formation, like schooling of fish and murmuration of starlings, and they all move in some kind of a choreographed motion without bumping into each other. And there is a very deep and very powerful and very precise mathematics how to achieve that. And they figured out the mathematics. It has to do with second, third, and fourth derivatives of motion. You've got to take data about the motion of your neighbors and do literally the calculus, second, third, and fourth derivatives, and do a calculation. And if you do that, and birds can do it, fish can do it, they're not very smart. Quadcopters can do it. And the people who program them know the math.
Right.
But it's not rule-based.
But it's only positional reasoning, right? It's not emotional reasoning. It's not hunger-based. It's not motive-based. It's not intention-based, So that's only one facet of cooperation.
But I'm just pointing out, because Alex raised this thing about not bump. If you want cars on the highway not to bump into each other, if they can take the measurement of the adjacent cars and do the same calculus as schooling of fish and murmuration of birds and flocks of quadcopters, it's a real-time mathematical calculation involving the calculus, and you can have very smooth flows without bumping into each other. It's known how to do it, but how many people know the math? Again, fraction of 1% can actually understand and execute the math.
Stacey?
So here's my question though, because you can know the math, but when you're talking about humans, you can't account for other humans' free choice. So at the time you're doing whatever equation, the humans might be at a certain point, but you can't account for what actions each of them will take. So that's what confuses me about this whole idea of math solving all of it.
Humans suck at math. Fish can do math. Birds can do math.
That's not the point.
Can't do math.
But that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, Sam, do you know what I'm saying? Could you use better words than me?
Partially.
I'll tell you if you're wrong, but try it. I think you know.
Okay. What I think Stacey may be trying to say is that math can't tell you human intentions. And you can't therefore represent that in math, is what I'm hearing Stacey lean towards.
I'm saying you can't always predict that the other numbers in the equation will stay the same as when you work the equation out.
But the numbers don't have to stay the same.
Okay, then that's above
If
my,
you point a gun at somebody and pull the trigger, the intention is to have a collision between the bullet and the person. Fish don't have that intention. They have intention of not having collisions. Humans, under the rule of law, have the intention of having a collision.
Alex?
There's a system where the numbers always stay the same, never change, and there's a system where they are constantly changing.
Yes.
Or free to change if the input of some other data set over.
Yes, absolutely.
And by the way, one of the most recent exciting things I see in software, and maybe only one or two of you will actually really get this, is this notion of what they call, and I think it's a bad word, they call it bitemporal databases. And what that really means is that facts aren't just facts. Facts are facts only as of a particular transaction ID, which is typically a timestamp, okay? And that therefore, if you take this notion, then no fact ever needs to get deleted because only new facts appear. And in fact, that more models reality in my view, okay? The history should never get deleted, right? So the fact that John Wilkes Booth did XYZ in some theater someplace, that is a quote unquote fact, which never needs to be deleted, never needs to be modified, never needs to be edited, okay? Unless, of course, we rewrite history. So these it started with notions of stream databases, but now they have this notion of bitemporal databases where you can now reason about what was true at a certain time. And you can also reason about the temporality. And the cool thing about that one really is because nothing gets deleted or changed, it's very scalable, highly scalable. Anyway, just wanted to, just drop that in there when people are talking about time and representation and facts. Over. Okay, so in the lull, I want to go revisit this other notion, which I still think for me is looming large in the room, which I don't think actually has been yet addressed by someone else, which is if we choose to sit this out, we're part of the problem. So I'm encouraging that we not take a let's sit this out position.
What do you mean by sit this out? What's this?
This could be, I'm tired of this. I don't want to talk about this anymore. That's one way of sitting this out.
Well, what's this? I'm tired
Whatever,
of what?
whatever we're faced with. It started as Kyle Rittenhouse, but it actually turned into, I think correctly, the larger systemic issue. So to the extent that we don't understand, I think that's an indication to keep leaning in rather than to get frustrated and to opt out. And by the way, that is the nature, that's underlying my commitment and why I'm still here every Saturday and in other forums as well. Over. Alex, Stacy.
I miss a Saturday now and again because I don't keep my calendar active, or sometimes, or I'm playing a game with headphones on and don't hear it or don't get a notification, or I'm just too tired. But the fact that I'm persistent enough to keep coming back and have another chip at it, chipping a bit off the block each time, because there is a motion. We are moving in a direction that seems to be suggesting we need a collaboration that is able to grow, has a viral element. And I think if we can focus more on the power of each individual at doing something with a web page or a link, then we're getting somewhere. Over. And we can even invite Esteban to come and join. Over.
So since we don't have anybody here that is like a fan or, applauding that Rittenhouse got off, I can share with you what some of them feel, because I have spoken to them, and that's part of the equation, because when it gets down to it, one thing that is somewhat legitimate is their feeling that the authorities should have had a better handle on things to start with. Now, again, that opens up another can of worms with all different opinions. But there are people on the other side. I don't know, Sam, you look confused. So this is not my opinion. This is what I'm hearing from rational people that have a different opinion than some of us here do. What they're saying is that if the police would have stepped up and had been more of a presence, then it wouldn't have forced the vigilantes out. Because they're saying that there was so much media pressure to go easy on the protesters in their mind. So when they see that flaming dumpster, they're saying that should have been handled by police. And then they go one step further and they say it wasn't handled by police because police were afraid of the liberals. And even though we may not agree with that, there is something that they have to be thrown into the equation too. I'm complete.
So again, not addressing the specific event, but I'm looking at a population of multiple events. Where do we find the consistency if a 17-year-old person armed with, what is it? Is it an AR-15 or something, can walk past police and be shaking hands and jovially, exchanging hellos with them. And yet a Black man cannot walk down the street unarmed without police harassing them and potentially shooting them. Where is the guidance on police behavior? And don't blame it on liberals. They don't get paid by liberals. They don't answer to liberals. They can't get fired by liberals, right? it's this story that, wants to come forward to justify whatever happened.
Well, and
But-
like Kayla mentioned earlier, look at the attack on the Capitol.
I was going to bring that up next. Right?
But again, that goes to my original point that most people have a hard time looking at situations that involve people they know and like, or people that they don't know and don't like in the same situation. They do not judge it the same way.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the people that are in power
Right.
tend to mostly be affiliated with other white people or other people of a different social class, because
Yeah.
it's not always about color. Sometimes it's about social class.
Yeah. So you respond to me. I'm going to quickly respond to you. One of the things I saw many years ago, which to me didn't sound correct, but to me over time sounds more and more correct, is that I love my children more than I love your children is the root of all evil.
It's true.
Tribalism.
It's true.
Josh has his hand up.
I think you said exactly what I was just about to say, Sam. That's pretty much comes down to that's the whole thing. It's really easy to get people to fight against each other, especially if you create a tribe and you go, okay, they're on the wrong. I mean, I experienced all of this in summer camp when I was 13 years old. They separated the camp into two tribes, the Weebaways and the Algonquins or whatever, some made up Massachusetts Native American names. And we fought against each other. It was exactly like politics. It was like red and blue. We were red, the other one was blue. And we fought to the death in every single competitive sport that summer. It was, which tribe are you on? In the mess hall, it was, oh, wait, you're in this tribe. You sit here at this table. And it was all just a social experiment by the people who put on the camp to see if the kids would get super, into each one. And it works. And we see it throughout all societies. And I think you really nailed it, Stacy, when you said, we will not go to our neighbors and solve a conflict with a gun, but we'll go overseas because we can disassociate. And I think that's really what I'm trying to get at is whatever it is that makes you disassociate. And is that an economic thing? Is that a racist thing? Like, it's really easy to disassociate with Black people if you don't live and spend time with Black people. So you don't know what they're thinking or feeling. And same thing with any race or any nation. It's really easy to say that Chinese are communists and they do this. If you don't know the Chinese culture and know how deep it goes in terms of governance and in terms of societies they've created for many, many years and how brilliant the people who set up the system are, it's easy just to look at them as the evil golem or the enemy. So I think it's more than anything, the best thing we can do is to, if we want to unite the world together, is to spend time educating ourselves on all the differences before we can create what's unique and putting us together. Let's learn let's like say we were all journalists and we got sent out throughout the world and we came back to GCC and said, Colin, what did you find out about the people up there in Quebec? And Sam, what did you find out about the people over in Idaho? And blah, blah, blah. All these regions are, it seems like they're all North American places, but there's some really strange nuances up in the Laurentian Mountains in Canada with the Quebecers that speak French. I mean, it's a whole different way of thinking, living, of values, of morals. And I'm just ranting right now. I just wanted to say thanks for letting me come on this conversation this morning, everybody. And thank you, Sam, for still putting on barn raising. And I have to get it back up to the Ancient Oak Retreat, and I'm trying to steward that land after the fire. So it's been a year and a half now, and we're getting ready for spring. And so I'm going to go up there and assess things before the winter. So I will have to leave early, but thank you. I'm done with my rant. I just think we all know exactly what we need to do. I was hoping too that when we share the information with each other, we can do it in a way that's not just educational, but it's exciting and fun and friendly and with goodwill towards each other, not just, oh yeah, well, you're wrong because the people in the Amazon do it this way and you don't do it that way because you're not spiritual and you've never taken ayahuasca, so you don't know about psychedelics. So hopefully we don't point out who's right or wrong in these other cultures that we share. And with that, I'm complete. Thank you.
Yes, so I agree with almost everything that Josh said, but I will say that I don't think telling these stories are going to make the difference. I think that we don't disassociate from people when we look into their eyes. I think we need to hear the stories from them. We need to see them telling their stories and be able to look at their faces. It's not going to be enough to have someone else tell, well, this is what they're like. Plus, it's not right because they're like, so what do you mean? They're all the same because they fit in one group? Is everyone in the GCC all the same because we're all part of the group? No, we're so many different things.
You know, humans have been trying to teach ourselves these lessons for thousands of years. You know, talk about not sitting it out. In the last 25 or 30 years, I think I've written more than 20 articles on this topic from every angle I could think of, almost one a year. And I put in the chat the table of contents of those 20 articles. And one of the things I look back on, I said, this is not new material. This is reframing this material that's been around for millennia in modern language, modern narratives, modern mathematics, modern analysis, but it's not new material. And so the question is, why is our species, who calls itself Homo sapiens, so learning disabled? Why are we so learning disabled?
Because we don't need learning. We're fat, dumb, and happy watching Netflix already.
You know, we added the arts to STEM. So we have science and technology and engineering and mathematics and the arts. We're trying to find, you know, all the elements to get across these ideas, both technically, analytically, and artistically, in every mode of communication we can invent and express. And we've been at it for 6,000 years, and we seem to be losing ground. You know?
I understand the importance of studying, researching, or focusing on something, but I've always maintained throughout my life that variety is the spice of life. Why box yourself into one specific ideal when variety is the spice of life?
Yeah. Science, technology, engineering, mathematics, the arts, theology, philosophy. I mean, how many different modalities can you come up with?
So to go back to Barry's question of why don't we learn, I just put in the chat, sometimes people don't want to learn because sometimes when they know the truth, they're going to have to change and they don't want to do that. So that ignorance is bliss comes into play. And I don't know if Heiner, did you want to say something? I saw your hand go up a little bit.
Yes, I really enjoyed this session. I somehow slept a little bit in between, but you always brought me back on thinking what you have been saying here and what it means and what I learned the last 5 weeks. Because my main topic with Jörg was from storytelling to filmmaking, and then from storytelling to realizing shared models and visions. And this was really the cream of the 2 weeks I experienced in Glasgow. We had such encounters inside and outside the gates, in the blue zones, in the green zones, in the pink zones. And I'm so exhausted, but I really felt much of what you were saying especially Josh at the end, fully resonated with me. Our turn was so much pulled apart by different captains or tribes and agendas and rotating crews and the external efforts of the people in demonstrations or in the circus of the green zone or in the negotiations in the blue zones, that I feel your contributions here today helped me a lot. I will try to sleep over it or dream over it and come back maybe together with Jörg another time, because I think we need many bonds to raise and to learn from each other. Over.
Thanks, Heiner. If I may. Barry, I want to respond to a phrase you used. I believe it was losing ground.
Yeah, losing ground,
Yeah. To me, that sounds like it's borderline frustrating or frustration. And
aspiration, frustration, you name it.
I think
Disappointment.
that is, I'm going to connect that back to what Stacy said, which is, can we approach this with as placid a state of emotion as we can? Because only, I think, by doing so, can we, most of us, do a reasonably good job of addressing what's in front of us. But anything that colors us, whether it's frustration, whether it's anger, whether it's grief, whether it's guilt, whether it's shame, I think skews our sense and our interpretation of what's really happening and what we're actually being told and what we're sensing. And this is, again, I'm going to tie it back to my notion of optimism. I think the only viable way to approach this is in an optimistic way. If not, you either create part of the chaos, become part of the problem, or you kill yourself. So I think reasonable people, in my opinion, have to consciously choose optimism. Over.
Yeah, my resting emotional state is perplexity. And the solution to perplexity is research, and hope is the emotional sponsor of research. So pretty much my whole career has been addressing extremely vexing and perplexing problems, which are important, and funding the research with not only hope, but actual resources. And I'm not the only one who's at it. A lot of people are at this issue of what are the most perplexing, challenging problems that we face, and what kind of research are we doing to discover solutions which we haven't yet somehow agreed to manifest. So hope is the emotional sponsor of research.
Alex?
I've been waiting for some response from my writing. I put up a blog about the essence of the book I'm publishing, which is in the blog post. It's called Cut to the Chase. And what I'm hoping is that will generate some enthusiasm for people to share it with their peer group, so that funding might arrive for the hemp farm. But that's like a project on the back burner. At the moment, it's on the back burner because I haven't even got the money to go and check the farm out. I can't even rent a vehicle and go and have a look at the moment. But that's in the future. And the problem at the moment is convincing one person that they do have power to create a network. But once they find out that all they need to do is add one more person, 1 and 1 plus 1 equals 2, they realize that these two people are not enough. They need a triad. And these two people end up making an agreement to add number 3. That's when the magic happens. I think that's when the triad appears, and you've got 3 people in a coalition, a collaboration, like the triad behind me in the thing, in the blue laser. If you've got three magnets, enormous, powerful magnets, all focused onto one spot, you can do amazing things with that. Find out what a quark behaviors, try and predict the unpredictable in quantum mechanics, for quantum computers, and for mining quantum cryptocurrency. Over.
I'll have to admit, I didn't quite understand all that. But let me add another fantasy. Okay, this is my second fantasy for today, and I'll probably use this as my checkout. I forget who actually today said, I think it was Stacy, right? Stacy, who said, you're not going to send your son armed to the neighbors to settle a dispute, right? But we're willing, or the rich of us and the government of us are willing to send our sons with big guns and big ships and big airplanes overseas. And someone else said, well, it's because we haven't actually humanized, right? We see the humanity of our neighbors, but we don't actually see the humanity of, as Josh was saying, the Chinese or the Arabs or the Muslims or whatever it is the other group is that you want to talk about. So here's my fantasy. And I'll probably try and do this in some way. I'd like to set up a website where every soldier in every army, in every country, can post a 1, 2, 3, 5-minute video of themselves. What they do, what they like, their family, what they want to achieve in life, where they live, what they like to do in their spare time. So we can put faces to our soldiers.
Love that.
And that we can then see the faces of the other soldiers. I'd like to try that.
I love that idea.
I missed the end of that, Sam. What was the experiment? Have each soldier see into each other's eyes somehow?
I mean, so we can see the faces of our soldiers and the other soldiers and see their humanity.
But we can. We just don't. We wait till too long. Until
it's not there, though. It's not actually made available.
Josh's hand is up, but I just want to say I'd love to see that with school children too, all over the world.
Oh, Kayla got all done up. Nice.
Josh?
Yeah, thank you, Stacey. I would love to see that too, to the point where in 2004, I found the website that did that curated all the content from all the soldiers, and it put it on a random repeat, and it was through YouTube. So it was everyone with their flip phones taking video of what was going on in Iraq. And so there is hashtags for that, and there are curation for that. But the problem that I see is we're forgetting that the soldiers aren't autonomous and they don't have the ability to do that. Meaning the soldiers in the Chinese army, they get special cell phones that don't allow them to do those postings or to communicate with all the other soldiers around the world. And also most of the soldiers in the country of America, where I am, are made up of minorities. So most of the soldiers are the throwaway people that cannot get a job, that need help for assistance for education, et cetera, and so forth. And so they're people that, one, can be controlled, and they would never allow their soldiers to be humanized and talk to the other soldiers, because that would create peace. And that would be a threat to the operation of the military protection, or whatever you want to call it, or destruction or war. It's just, it's kind of like two diametrically opposed ideas. I think it's a beautiful idea, Sam. I think it would definitely end war. And I think anyone who runs an army would never allow their soldiers to be humanized and to meet the other soldiers And it reminds me of a story in World War I where the soldiers on both sides of the war were fighting each other, but the real enemy was the wolves. And they had to band together and fight the wolves and then go back to fighting each other. And I think it's, it's a great idea in theory, but in practice, we're not allowing our military to be autonomous and post whatever they want. And that's why 2004 was such a special time. I can't find that today. They're not allowing the soldiers to post up the videos they were in 2004 because YouTube had barely come out. And the postings, it was 2004, 2005 when YouTube just got started before, I think Rupert Murdoch bought it first or something, but they weren't curating it in the way that they are now. And just like information that we want to have come out, I do think, Sam, you should set up a website. One of them that was set up that you can see how it ended was called WikiLeaks. And that was set up to do exactly what you just said, is to allow the soldiers to post what they're feeling and what's going on.
No, it's not exactly what I just said. And I'm going to go out of order here, okay? And I think this is one of my smart people problems, okay? Is to understand that there are many difficulties in going after a project and letting that kill the project before it ever gets started is a smart people.
So if you're going to power over, I'm just going to go. Thanks.
Yes. I do think that this is a common problem, is that, when a proposal is actually immediately, criticized because it can't work, then we actually lose the opportunity to collaborate on it. And that's what I sense happened, okay? So that's why I wanted to speak out. Too often this happens. Too often someone says, I have an idea, and somebody immediately criticizes it without really appreciating, what's really, and I'm not talking about my idea. I'm talking about other ideas here as well. I'm not talking about my idea. I'm just talking about this as a conversation pattern.
Absolutely.
Okay? So if that pattern being identified is taken personally, then yes, someone chooses to step away. But I do think it's something that I see too often, and I just need to speak out about that. Over. Alex?
I think it's a good idea, and if you want to make it your own, you're welcome to do so. This is the place. This is where your collaborators are here for you to join with and support. So, in that sense, it's a genius move. And if it gets enough support, it will run on the back of the contributors and the sponsors who pay you for putting up banners and that. All those groups that are ex-army.
Yeah, those are secondary issues to me. Again.
Yeah, but it's there in the design phase. You'll find the empathy from collaborators ready to offer feedback and suggestions, and that's where the magic comes in from the soup. The key ingredient in the soup is the feedback, I believe.
Okay. Thank you, Alex. Colin.
Yeah, kind of went off my thought with the exchange between you and Josh.
So do you want Stacy to go first?
What were you talking about just before that?
Do you have something to say, Colin?
Yeah, go ahead, Stacy.
Okay, because I want to go back to the smart people problem of shutting down a project, not specifically having to do with the project that Sam mentioned, but in general, what that does, because it happens a lot, and it's usually, oh, this was tried 10 years ago. This was tried back here. So what it does is two things. It negates the possibility that times are different, but it also takes away any impact that the process of creating might have. And to me, that's the biggest danger, because it really is about the journey. That's all I wanted to say.
Barry.
Yeah, I wanted to loop back to that overlay that Colin had put up on logical fallacies. I don't know if you saw it, it was a slideshow of, I don't know, a dozen, 2 dozen classical logical fallacies. And there's one that's actually missing from it, which I think is perhaps more relevant than most of them. And that is the fallacy that I call proof by vigorous assertion, or perhaps even proof by violent assertion or threat of violent assertion. And that sort of gets back to this concept of powering over. Of all the logical fallacies that I've encountered, I think that proof by vigorous assertion is the most problematic and commonplace one that we encounter. And what happens is people walk away.
Or they get scared into,
Or they shoot back. So they either shoot back violently, get into a loud, raucous argument, which could get to be violent fisticuffs, or one of them just poofs.
Yeah,
I tend to poof, just in case you're wondering.
but that's also where relationships come into play. I'll be quick, Alex, because the stronger the relationship or the more connection you have with a person, the more likely you'll stick around for longer. Or if you do leave, you'll come back.
Olin, did you recover what it is you wanted to say?
Well, there's been many things. And I think the thread has changed. So I'll just let it be and see if you want to ride this little ripple out or if it's done.
Alex?
There was many illogical fantasies. Over a lifetime, you collect these things. And one of them was the belief in a superstitious fear, a fantasy created by many centuries of religion and philosophy that there's some kind of afterlife. There's more to this existence than the brief 4 score years or whatever we have used to be. Now life expectancy has increased a lot, and we could have a much greater life expectancy with CRISPR. CRISPR is developing technology that's incredibly life-giving and age-extending techniques, repairing chromosomes and stuff. So that's interesting. But the thing about illogical fantasies and logical fantasies and logical errors in thinking is that we're not basing our research models correctly on our peer group's systemic platforms. We're just thinking about their experience in the lab and our own personal beliefs, which are tainted by bias, opinions from other sectors and other professionals in our peer groups. But when it comes down to the nitty-gritty crunch, the fact remains that people who have done a lot of more research are more likely to be closer to the mark than those who have not. Over.
Remember one thing, Sam, about you were saying ways of testing. That was where the conversation changed and I was interested. So the rules and how to test them. And also with Barry, I take a nuance of simplicity generalization with the idea of rules, because rules can be functional rules, right? And so when I think of rules, I don't dismiss the fact that they could be functional or provisional, conditional. And the last thing I wanted to say was to tie in with the idea of justice. And that was when you're looking at philosophy and ethics and epistemology, what you know, how you should feel, what your morals are. There's no consensus. And there's good messages from many sources of ancient knowledge. And we talk about it here. It'd be nice to kind of put together a snowman of good knowledge, but pile it on top of each other and see if we can make it jive. But one thing I learned recently was you might pronounce this better than me, Barry or Sam or Stacy. Anybody's into philosophy, it's called the Trimunchin dilemma. Trimunchin. Munchenhausen, that's it. The Munchenhausen trilemma. How about that for a mush of syllables? So the Munchenhausen trilemma, which is basically has 3 results, and it's based on axioms. So once you try to figure out what truth is and what's ultimately holding up your truths, you'll find that you result to axioms. And these axioms either are cyclical, which means they're self-referential, or they're recursive, which means turtles all the way down, infinite regress, or it's based on some kind of absurdity. I can't remember exactly the text. I could find that, but in essence, that goes back to what I'm trying to bring together and realizing what the public is going to listen to at their different levels of education is narratives, be it at the top or the bottom. I think we discovered that quite some time ago, and that I thought we were in agreement that stories were kind of the top level of human collective intelligence as a planet. Now, maybe once you get into a specialty, you get into a special mathematics or special jargon models and testing. But when you're trying to figure out what's good so that you could take your COI and go from country to country and get people to copy it and say, yes, this is the best, or whatever that list, I don't think you're going to find it. So I hope you didn't misinterpret me, Sam, when I said it wasn't worth trying. It's that I think aim for coexistence instead of perfection. I don't think it can be had. So when you're making your functional rules, aim for coexistence and not you win. Because the you win means they lose. And even a win-win-win will probably break down somebody losing. And I think if you do the win-win-win-win-win-win-win enough, then you're starting to talk about coexistence. And that's really, really hard because we can only put our resources into so much. And so there's constraints to be considered. And I'll leave it there. What are the constraints to actually making this snowman of better? and putting that narrative out there like a totem pole or something. I don't know. Anyway, thank you. Did you get all that? You look puzzled, Sam.
I'm going to have to listen to that again.
Maybe
Well,
Colin
essentially
can write
philosophy.
a brief post on the GCC
Yeah.
page so that we can read it and ponder it and understand it.
I mean, this whole notion of axioms is used a lot of places, but to me, the only place it really was used, it was used in a very okay, let me not say that. Let me say that at least in my experience, who was it? Bertrand Russell did with the Principia Mathematica, starting from axioms and creating all of mathematics from what, 1 or 2 or 3 axioms, was remarkable. And a lot of disciplines try to recreate that, to try and find some minimal kernel of something you just accept in order to build up all the other thinking structures of that domain. If you look at the axioms in the Principia Mathematica, they're extremely simple. They're like, here's a symbol, here's a set, or something equivalent. Here's another symbol. Here's how you go from one symbol to another symbol. And out of that, you create all of mathematics. Just like in Turing, you know, here's the delta T. Here's a symbol. Here's what you can do to a symbol. And then you can create all of computing. And I think a lot of disciplines want to do that. But I think the notion of what is an axiom is sometimes diluted. And they may not be as quote unquote axiomatic as people think.
Axiom just means it's the fundamental reasoning which you cannot break down any further.
It just means something you
just
have to
have to
accept
assume it.
without,
Yeah.
without being able to go
Yeah.
further. Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes it does break down. Like the axiom of gravity kind of broke down. It's more variable than we thought. Now maybe it's time.
I
That's the only.
don't ever
variable
believe
thing.
that gravity was an axiom.
Well, yeah, you may be right about that. But thinking that gravity was a fundamental force that couldn't be changed, maybe. So that's a truth about an axiom.
So
I got you. So yeah, truths get changed all the time.
That's where you have to be careful about using the word axiom. Alex.
I guess, yeah. An axiom that is a fundamental statement about truth as opposed to an extrapolation. And I guess I was thinking fundamental forces of nature and got that confused with the fundamental truths of nature. Yeah.
Well, I think when you use the word axiom, you must use it in context with its baggage. It always comes with a lot of baggage. It all, depends on the culture and the circumstances and the environment you're in, the political atmosphere and the climate. But there are philosophies and axioms involved in language and other things. But the reason I put my music notation up was there's a mathematics involved in music. You can use computers to create beautiful compositions. They're not bionic organic creatures. They're just computers processing MIDI waves and things, samples. So that's incredible what the computer can do like that. It's following this systematic mathematical equations with a few rules. So well-designed rules, I think we can use those over Barry.
One of the most notorious axioms in the annals of human civilization is the foundation axiom of Western civilization, which was introduced about 5,000 years ago. It's the axiom that suggests that the rule of law suffices to create a governmental model that yields what is called law and order. If you want law and order, you have a set of laws, and if you get the right set of laws, you're going to have order. That axiom was disproven. It's a false axiom. You can have order, but not if you believe in the rule of law as the mechanism to generate an orderly, well-behaved, stable society that's not chaotic and violent. That false axiom that was adopted some 5,000 years ago is notorious. In fact, it was given the name by a theologian. He called it original sin. I say, nah, it's just the original math error. It's original logic error that humans committed some 5,000 years ago, and it was a math mistake. It's a simple math. It's not even a complicated math mistake.
Let me understand that. Are you referring to the Magna Carta? Are you referring to the Greeks? Are you referring to the ancient Chinese? Who are you referring to?
Mainly Hammurabi, because he gets credit not for inventing it, but for writing it in stone tablets. Something like 4,000 years ago, he wrote it down.
Yeah.
Stone tablets.
So I don't consider that an axiom in the sense that mathematical axioms are axioms. It may be a principle, it may be an assumption, but there's plenty underneath it. There's a notion of law, there's a notion of order. So themselves, are components of this axiom, which by my definition, make it non-axiomatic.
It's definitely not an axiom.
It's
but
not
it's
an
a
axiom.
foundation principle that all you need is a well-crafted set of laws, and you have a government, a well-regulated governmental system that's well-behaved, predictable, stable, etc.
Right.
Law and order is the code word.
So what I'm seeing is at every stage, there's some attempt to try and improve the state of affairs.
Yes.
And perhaps instituting laws at that time improve the state of affairs, right? Just like Lao Tzu said, there's a set of things that you should realize that would improve the state of affairs here in the warring states or whatever that time period was. Or that, the Constitution was an attempt to improve a state of affairs.
Yeah.
And the Magna Carta was an attempt to improve the state of affairs,
Yep.
And the Greeks, with their laws were attempts as well. But the problem is to then carve that in granite and then not evolve beyond it appropriately. And I
Yep.
think that's where we are here today in the United States.
Interesting.
Not only is it
That's the narrative,
not
right?
carved in granite, but it's not even well understood, even if it's carved in granite.
Huh.
I believe that the Constitution is carved in granite in Washington somewhere, right?
Interesting.
Isn't it?
That I
Should
don't
be.
know.
Is it in Congress somewhere? Anyway,
I don't know.
Should do
so
it in
I think
gold.
that the problem is we haven't learned to evolve beyond it, even though the founders put in the mechanism of amendments,
Yes.
but it's a very high bar.
Yes.
2/3 supermajority among states. Jesus, sorry, I shouldn't say Jesus. It's a very high bar. It's a very high bar. And
Well, you
with
hit the word
stupidity
proof.
as rampant as it is, it's hard to get in, a majority of intelligent people because we have so much stupidity right now. And yes, I will say that.
Yeah.
There's an element missing from the discussion. When you think about all those writings throughout history that were designed to make the system work better with laws and whatever else that was involved, constitutions, Hammurabis, there's the element that they weren't calculating was the human element, because it's not justice by itself that's important, it's the justice system, which involves the justice system's comprised of human beings, and that's the weakness. So that affects the justice. So, it's up to the individual to make change. One person can create change if they understand the power they have to change things and not give up on it, be willing to participate, be willing to agree over.
Any other hands? Because my next statement is going to be my checkout. Okay.
I just wanted to put onto your proof there, Sam, since it's really trying to find out what axioms are. And I think this is kind of why I mentioned the Munchausen trilemma. And it's a theoretical impossibly of proving any truth. That's the idea, even in the fields of logic and mathematics, without appealing to and accepted assumptions, which are these axioms, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You can
And
prove
so-
something within a framework of axiomatic foundations.
Yeah. And so whether the fallacy would be that there is something more fundamental than the axioms you think you're using. So you're right to call that one out, because people really don't know the underlying foundations of things unless they study it, right? And then what you find with this trilemma is proposing that there's only 3 ways of completing a proof, and it says they're all kind of unsatisfying. Yeah, the decision among these 3 are equally unsatisfying options. So a circular argument, regressive argument, or a dogmatic argument. Anyway, that's something I came across that seemed to be some deep thinking done for me ahead of time. Now I can contemplate whether I agree with it or not. But it's interesting to find these pivot points of logic that really are well thought out, and they kind of stitch together the question, because if philosophy is anything, it's the art of asking good questions. So anyway, thank you, Sam.
So my only response to that one is, and yet we still have a very large body of useful knowledge.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to close out with the following statement. And maybe I shouldn't name names, maybe I should name names, but in my experience, there's been at least 3 times where something I said has caused a reaction to cause someone else to immediately depart the session. And I find that interesting because I think disagreements, in my view, are welcome. And there's a chance to lean in, to create some mutual understanding, to co-create something, to demonstrate how to disagree well. But departing is eliminating that opportunity. So I would just like to observe that and actually say, hey, it's happened at least 3 or 4 times now. And it doesn't go unnoticed. And with that, I'll check out. I really enjoyed today's conversation, by the way. Thank you all. I think we properly, expanded from Kyle to the more systemic set of issues. And I think a lot of good points were raised. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Sam. What I was going to mention was not only the fact that there is more than 3 answers to any problem, but what I found that gave me a satisfactory solution to the question of existence was, do I look within and find the truth? Do I have an open heart and enough humility and personal rigorous honesty to accept what I find when I look within and do this meditation and prayer, this sort of search for meaning? And that it works anyway. So it was a satisfactory answer. The answer that came to me from doing that kind of inner work was incredible. A powerful opening up of possibilities and vistas beyond your wildest dreams, beyond your fantasies. That gives life more meaning and value, lots of value. Over.
I'll check out by saying that we live in a culture where everyone is incompletely educated because there's an infinite amount of knowledge to be discovered and acquired, and nobody's going to get an infinite amount. But not only are we incompletely educated, many of us are miseducated or poorly educated. And so the challenge I think that we face is how to function effectively in a culture where your audience, that is the people around you, are known to be at the very least incompletely educated, and at worst poorly educated or miseducated. And I think that's a really hard and largely unsolved problem to ponder.
Do we have anyone else for checkout? And can we ponder Barry's really hard problem with some conversation and discussion in the chat? Can we have a special session to ponder this question, really big question? What are we here for on this earth? That's the big question.
I will check out, and I will just say that inside of us all, there's a part that doesn't need to be educated. It just needs to come back out, because I think we've been miseducated. It's not so much the lack of the education, it's the miseducation. So I think that, some of you may be surprised at how wise some people who don't have a formal education or who haven't had the best of life circumstances, there's still a wisdom within them. And I think that when we approach people, we need to be looking for what that wisdom is. And I'll check out with that. And Kayla came back on, so I was, no, I thought you were coming on to check out.
I just wanted to say thank you. I really enjoyed this session. And
Have a
somehow I pinned you, Stacy, and I can't unpin you.
I don't see it.
Okay, never mind. It was probably only pinned on my end.
You have to click on the little pin icon in the corner of the image.
I don't mind pinning Stacy.
Is
Pin her up on my wall.
this a match or what? A women's wrestling match?
Some of the icons need a right click for the menu to open.
Okay, I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. I'll be in the hotel or maybe walking around. Bye.
Have fun. Bye. Bye, everybody. Oh, I'm sorry. Did Colin, did you want to check out, Colin?
Oh yeah, he's still here.
Okay, well, if he's not going to check out or Heiner's not going to check out, I am leaving.
Yeah.
So
Oh, can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay, we're on B2, not B1. Okay, small technicality. Yeah, it was a really interesting show. I like the idea of fairly finding a way to efficiently listen to what people have to say so that they feel heard at least and understood at most. And then one can then reflect on what they've said because people will be giving concise feedback or at least informed feedback. And we've explored a lot of those things, like defining terms. Stacy with the definition game was a great idea for certain topics. Could be fun to approach that way. The one with axioms today, I think the third definition of the Webster dictionary qualifies to Hammurabi in. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, it takes a long time to discuss this, and people who have specialties have learned models in a certain way, and that affects the framework of how they see things, their bias. So yeah, there's Heiner. Maybe Heiner wants to check out.
No, I thought I was checking out already. I still like the session. Good night
Okay.
and good luck.
Bye.
Okay, see you, Heiner. Thank you. So yeah, we could try to move forward with some of these ideas if we wanted to, like Josh said, focus. And I think the last session, I think it was Sunday, Barry and I was talking about a proposal of something the GCC could take on as an intelligent community of some sort. Because I think that's what we want, an intelligent community. So Stacy, you know, she wants a way that, you know, people can be heard. I'm all for that. Because you never know, even stupid people have good ideas sometimes, right? So Sam can't just knock them all out of the game. Plus, I think intelligence isn't the highest virtue anyway. I think it's a gift, right? So we have to treat it appropriately. Anyway, how do you validate the ultimate question? Make a map, but it's not the territory. How do you validate it? So I'll just check out with that. I don't know if Barry wants to continue the discussion about proposal of some of his earlier work. I know Heiner's said some of that stuff. Yeah, see you, Stacy. She's in a rush, so see you later, Alex. And with that, that's my checkout.
Everybody have a good weekend.